really looking into what we all bring into this profession, right? Different experiences, different knowledge bases, different biases that we have to break down and talk about, and then making sure we understand what equity versus equality is. Be inclusive.
Alyssa Mages has 18 years experience in multiple disciplines of veterinary medicine. And in 2020, she started an LLC called Empowering Veterinary Teams with her good friend, Caitlin Keat. She is an ally, a trainer and coach, a speaker, a mentor, and an empowerment enthusiast. We discuss her pivotal career journey as well as how to empower individuals and empower teams in veterinary medicine. And Alyssa believes we can do it all with fun.
You said something in, I think it was the Veterinary Innovations podcast, where you're bringing fun back to the veterinary clinic. And I loved that. I wrote it down to make sure that I bring it up during the interview.
Right. Good.
And I really appreciate that. I think it's not a conversation that we talk enough about.
There's so many things that we tuck away, in
Yeah.
the proverbial closet. It's no longer just, sexual orientation that hides, right? There's so much that we
Yeah.
just shove aside, and not to belittle that journey at all. That's not what that was intended for, but that we don't talk about things that need to be talked about.
Yeah, these hard conversations that impact us as people in this profession that we don't talk about enough. I hope that we can pull out some of those in our conversation today. You have had quite an interesting career path with pivots.
So we were just talking about that, how people that knew me 5-10 years ago, I'm still at my core the same, but I'm very different than what they have used to. I had way more hair. I did. And now I've got, shaved sides, and I can't wait till this grows out so I can do my mohawk again. It's coming.
Oh.
Yeah, Megan, it's funny. I think all of us, when we set out on this professional journey, we start off as little, always wanting to grow up, right? Always wanting to get there faster and do it. And then we get there like, oh, actually, it was kind of nice when I didn't have to do all of this stuff. But we don't listen to our parents. I didn't, and my children certainly don't. And that's not true. They're very good. But I guess I always kind of giggle that I didn't think I always wanted to do something with animals, and then I start talking about it, and I always had some sort of critter in my life. Whether it was crayfish I decided to bring home from the creek, or the guinea pig I begged my parents for, and then finally got a real pet when we got our first cat, and then I was set. I tried to deny it for a long time, like, no, I'm a dog person. I love dogs, but I am a cat person. I'm just gonna own that. I really relate to I will love you and be super sweet on my terms. Thanks. So it was kind of, all right, I love animals, great, but I really love the ocean and swimming, and I was a synchronized swimmer for 20 years, so a little bit unique in and of itself, and fell in love with the marine life, and then realized that marine biologist, it's a great lifestyle, but it's not so much a lucrative profession, even less so than as a veterinary technician. Yes, that's true, guys. You can make less. It wasn't bad. I lived in the Florida Keys on a houseboat and taught scuba. It didn't suck. But I realized that as I was swimming and diving with these incredible creatures, on my days off, I would go and work at Mote Marine Lab or Marathon Turtle Rescue. And I was like, this is where it's at. This is what is really amazing. You're really making a difference. I want to do that. But you need veterinary experience. So I had to figure that part out. And I had a bit of a segue in between the 2 semesters teaching at the Marine Institute, and was back home lifeguarding for a little bit. And one of the master's swimmers was like, what the hell are you doing with your life in that chair? And I was like, oh, thanks. That's a good point. I don't know. And so, well, I wanted to try that veterinary thing. We take our cat to the hospital. Let's go there. And I said, oh yeah. And if you can get excited about cleaning kennels and, mopping things and walking dogs, then it's probably a good indication that this is the profession you need to be in. So I did that for a few months when I wrapped up at the Marine Institute, because my, at the time, boyfriend and then fiance got into graduate school in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is where my mom's oldest brother had moved in the 60s, and all my cousins lived. And I was like, well, if you're going out there, I'm coming. There's no way I'm staying here. That's 3,000 miles of distance relationship. So got out there and realized, and this is a good pivotal moment. Don't move to a foreign country, because even though Canada's similar, it's still a different country without a job lined up, guys. Don't do that. And realize what that entails, right? That you need to actually have a position that cannot be filled by, in that instance, a Canadian, and that you have sponsorship. I had family, but not professional sponsorships. So that was an interesting journey, figuring that out. We managed, and I did get a work visa to work at a mixed animal practice and then a specialty center while I was volunteering at the Vancouver Aquarium. But lesson learned, plan a little bit. But, in your 20s, 22, 23, that'll be fine. We'll figure it out. It was, but no. So we were there until 2008 and got married, and just kidding, decided to become parents, even though we didn't actually have any choice in that matter. She just decided, hey, here I am. And thank goodness she did. I was on a huge career trajectory. Like, it was applying into vet school, going, and then wham, another big pivot where you make all these plans. You see, now I was good at planning. I hadn't done it at all. And now I was over planning. And life is like, hey, I'm going to show up right now and throw all that away. That's not what you really want to do. I was mad for a really long time. And it was my, I think, probably second or third foray into some much needed psychotherapy after she arrived. Another thing, Megan and I talked earlier, things we don't talk about, right? Postpartum depression in general.
Yeah.
It's becoming more commonplace to talk about mental health, as it should. But back in the early aughts, we didn't talk about that. But thankfully, I found a therapist who not only was a psychotherapist, but she was a massage therapist, and she did Reiki. That was very cool.
Oh, wow.
So it was a very mind, body, soul experience. And it got me to a place of, this is where you're meant to be, and you get to choose now. Oh, okay, cool. So vet techs can work anywhere. So we moved back to the States. And I use that term loosely as I've become very much more adherent to what that means. So really an assistant, and a cocky one, if I'm going to be honest, because I had a bachelor's degree. So I was better than your average assistant. No, I wasn't. No, I had no business saying. But, life again is like, excuse me, let's get some, humility there, would you please? And realized I knew what I was doing, but not why. And got hooked in with some really awesome emergency docs. And they're like, go back to school and then come work with me and be my lead tech. I'm not qualified to be your lead technician. Yes, you are. And here we go again. And that journey, I really learned a lot about how to start a practice and how to be a part of that integral decision-making process. And then realized how much work it is to actually learn how to lead. I wasn't very good at it. I made some serious mistakes. I bought into the click mentality, as we all tend to do, and regardless of what industry we're in, but I really bought into it. Having not been that cool kid in high school, and now I was kind of in a position of leadership and I wanted to be cool. And I really hurt some people. That's the opposite of cool. So I had to do, really own that and realize, where is that coming from? And okay, all right, back to therapy. Got it. Still have work to do, and it was a painful lesson, and it's one that has always stuck with me. If I've never forgotten that. If someone that looks up to you as a mentor, you better darn well not lose that, right? And make sure that you keep them into consideration. It's not about you. This was in a GP with a dear friend, and then I got my CVT in 2012. This whole journey started in 2004, so this has been 8 years already. I moved into the suburbs. We had a little one and another one on the way. And school districts being what they were in Philadelphia at the time, they've since improved greatly, but we wanted to get some more green space and be closer to my folks. And so we moved out and started working at a huge referral practice, and I loved it. I was there for often, I took one off because my knee broke again. I did pharmaceutical sales. I sucked at it. And that's another good lesson. Here's another pivot. Learn what you're not good at and know what you don't know. It's going to be one of the best teaching lessons moments in your life, because I had a lot of experiences. I've traveled a lot. I've done weird sports. I've eaten really bizarre foods. But you don't know what you don't know. And to have that put into your very clearly into focus of, you don't know how to do this and you're not really great at it. It bruises the ego more than a little bit, and it doesn't taste very good. But then you realize, well, okay, then what am I good at? What am I passionate about? And that right about that point was when I rediscovered teaching and how that's so intricately linked to coaching and training, and was able to hook back in with my alma mater from my veterinary technology program. And I got a position as an adjunct. And I loved it. They then asked it like, okay, we're going to have you teach dentistry. And I went, excuse me? So, I've done it. I didn't know a lot about it. So that was, okay, I need to take this CE, this CE, this CE, and talk to a friend of mine who is, I believe, this close to finishing her VTS in dentistry, and be like, help, I don't know how to do this bisect angle. Again, I had learned that I didn't know what I didn't know. And I wasn't going to fake it, because this is someone's degree. This is our profession. I did not want to mess this up. So I'm getting on this path, and then come back after I'm in that position as professor, and getting back. This time we actually had plenty of people as technicians in practice, and they didn't have a position for me. This is 2015, 2016. So I was a CSR. Ever think that you know how hard someone's job is until you sit in that chair? Whew. So another learning moment. Don't assume you know what another person's day is like. You don't. And I didn't. I do now. And I was in the business office on the phones. I wasn't even at the front desk. And that was hard, right? They're the reason, those individuals are why we all have jobs, people, right? They pick up the phones and get the clients to come in and calm them down before we get to them as the medical team. So I was able to do both of those. And then got the call that my mom had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and my world bottomed out. I'm an only child. She and my dad, they're my poor, right? And her oncotype was high, it was bad. So it was going to be chemo and radiation. I was like, well, all right, little stuff doesn't matter. That was the first time I shaved my head. And after that moment, when we're all buzzy headed together, I was like, whoa, you really take stock of what's important. I didn't care if I was the best CSR or the best technician or anything. It mattered that I was there for my family and my friends, and what was I doing to make a difference in this world. So I was very fortunate at the time. They were building a new position at this practice for education and development, which is taking on, hey, teaching, nursing skills. I was like, oh, please pick me. I could really do this. And I did, and was in that position for 3 years. And my mom went into remission, and then my knee decided to go out again, the other side. So I've now had a total of 7 knee surgeries. It's a lucky number though, because I'm done. They're fixed, but my ortho is like, all right, this sign is on your chart. You're orthopedically unfit for running. It's like, I'm okay with this one. I don't like to run without proper motivation. Lions are like a T-Rex. I'll run, but you want to hang out with me in a zombie apocalypse, because they'll get me. You'll be fine. So it was becoming rapidly apparent that physically I couldn't do this anymore. Mentally, my littles were not so little. I was missing a lot. And as much as I was able to do within this practice, I wanted to do more. And one of my best friends was in a similar position. Like, we got to make a difference, because at this point it was politically, our world was kind of falling apart. It still is, but that's a whole other podcast. So what can we do? Well, vet med, and I'm a program manager. How can we create something? And so in June of 2020, great timing, we decided to launch Empowering Veterinary Teams officially. And that is a lot of my pivots on my path.
Oh, and did you say the name of your friend?
I didn't. No, gosh. Sorry, Caitlin. You know how much I love you. Caitlin Keat. So we've been best buds since 2002.
That's wonderful. Now more than ever, do we need to support each other, both on a learning our nursing and veterinary skills, because we are in high demand, but also on the other side of it, not just the hard skills, but the very inappropriately named soft skills
Oh, I
Is
have a
she
new
love-
one there for you.
Oh, good. What's the new term that we should
Well,
start using?
I call them human skills
There we go.
because there's nothing fluffy about them.
And so what are some of your favorite things that you're now teaching under your LLC?
All of it. That's
Good way to be.
it's such a loaded question. Well, we're actually in the process of kind of divesting some of the human skills to a new organization that we're launching with another group. But that's still kind of under wraps. So I'll share that with you when it comes out. But all of like the communication and things are going to a different direction. It's still interwoven with what we do from a clinical standpoint, but what we're focused on is the standardization and optimization of the support team members within a practice. So your CSRs, your assistants, and your technicians. Love the doctors. We're actually in the process of working with a couple DVMs to make an onboarding program for new grads and new associates, which I'm really excited about. And that sounds kind of boring, like standardization. But if you know where you're starting and you can see where you're getting to, there's a lot of fun stuff that can happen in between. And so beyond all of the evaluations and the thresholds and the progressions and all the role clarity and all the terms that management and everyone has to roll out, we as individuals need to know about. It's, hey, you want to do a do-it-yourself workshop and make a training mannequin? Yeah, we're going to use all the recycled bits around the hospital that you thought you were going to throw away. Use them. Have you played with a urinary bladder before, not been terrified to poke the renal artery? No? Let's do it. We've got some, right? So all these fun models and, extemporaneous things that take the fear out of it and make it fun, right? Remember when we actually liked what we did instead of like, oh, I gotta go to work again. It's like, ooh, I get to go to work again, right? And you take that guesswork out of it. If you know why you're doing what you're doing, and then you can have an event to look forward to practice it without the stress of the animal dying on you while you're trying and everyone's staring at you. Then when you get in there, your muscle memory works. And it's just, let's take the stress out of it, right? And so are we well-being experts? No, there's plenty of those out there. But do we interweave it in everything that we do? Yes. Are we active allies? Absolutely. Is that in part of every conversation we have? Yes. So to me, the changes and the evolution of what we're doing with the industry is what's really fun.
So with your experience, you've talked about multiple roles that you've had, everything from more like hospital management to veterinary technician to now more the L&D side in a hospital. What are some of the biggest problems where we can address and really get, I think of it as bang for our buck, right? So what's something, like one thing that we could do that would really, really make us have a better and a more fun career?
That is an amazing question and a really challenging one because it's such a multifaceted answer. But I think really at the root of it is we need to know who we are and what we can do. And that's a big part of the issues that we face is, am I a veterinary technician? Am I an assistant? Am I a nurse? What are we calling ourselves? How do we qualify that? How do we quantify that? There's no set way because it's based on state to state. Like in Pennsylvania, I'm a CVT. In New York, I'd be an LVT, only if I pass the exam, right? And if I'm down up in Canada, I'm an RVT. But every province up there is an RVT. It's different state to state, and the requirements are different state to state. So there's no universal approach into how we regulate who does what, where, when, why, and how. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get into practice, what are you called? And how do you know what you're allowed to do? There's definitely things out there, but are they being implemented, right? And is it everyone given the same tools with which to learn from, to build upon, and to grow? Do they know that they can go from point A to point G and do all the stuff in between and then go even further? Or do they just get blown away by it all and just stop, right? Because of all the influx of things. So for me, I think the most important thing is to figure out, number one, what an assistant is, what a technician is. I love the idea of the nurse initiative. I really do. I believe that we are as skilled as human nurses. And I think eventually we will get there, but we're not ready yet. And it's a protected term. And I'm proud to be a veterinary technician. I really am. I've earned it because I worked really hard and I took that exam and I put my time in. I also respect those individuals that have been in the industry for 10, 15, 30 years and never took the VTNE, but my God, do they know their way around a vessel, right? Or the OR. Like that hands-on life experience, you can't put a qualifier on that. Do we not call them veterinary technicians, right? So how do we standardize this? So we need to standardize how we are addressed, what our role clarity is, who does what, how we can make sure that that is compensated appropriately, and then build upon it from there to make sure that, hey, that once you've been doing this amount of time, that you're going to make this and that you're able to do this, and then you get to go onwards. You got to make that path so they can make their own pivots.
Yes, I've had someone that came on and talked about a little bit on the naming and how crazy that is, and that there isn't a standardization, and that there's most states don't even have veterinary technician in their practice acts. So that is, and I'll have somebody come on talking more about the politics behind these things. How do we get them into practice? Well, what I want to ask you is, I do know that when it comes to changing a practice act or doing something on like the political level, that takes time. So what can clinics do now and what are you doing now with your company that you're talking about that is trying to help standardize this faster and not in 10 years when we can get it written in no, I'm exaggerating, hopefully.
Oh my gosh, please.
What can we do now to help that clarity in job titles and roles and really being a smoother functioning team, more collaborative?
Right there, Megan, is exactly what you said, is to be a collaborative, functional team. We have to stop doing this us versus them mentality, right? And we have to stop butting heads and arguing over every little thing. We're not going to get anywhere. We all know that if you're working in practice anywhere right now, whether it's labeled as a general practice or an emergency specialty center, everyone's doing urgent care. Everyone, because there's just not enough of us and we have to. So we need to start in the same way, right? How do you approach a physical exam, right? There are, even as much as we can argue with whatever the AVMA does, they have standardized these approaches, right? You start your physical exam from the tip, then you go to the tail. Do it the same way, same patient every time. Apply that methodology to every skill and evaluate it both from a written perspective as well as a practical application. So who's capable of what and at what capacity. It's competency based. So it takes the onus off of the individual and puts it on the process. So you're not calling someone a beginner. They're not a level 1. They are developing and then eventually, evolving and implementing their skills, right? You're focusing on what they're doing and how is that evaluated? How many times they've done it and with what type, how was their technique? How was their execution? Were they prepared? Right? These are the types of things you're looking at, but you're focused on the skill. And that's another part of it too, is the type of conversations we have and the language we're using, right? You don't assess anyone, you assess yourself. You evaluate someone else. And how is that then incorporated back into what we do? So to have that approach be the same of, these are the benchmarks, this is the process, this is how you get here, and that's how you get there. Done. Now, is there going to be wiggle room and, customization? Yeah, because there's no one right way to do anything unless we're talking about taping catheters. And Amy Newfield and I have had this conversation already, so we won't go into it. We don't talk taping between the Cornell method and elsewhere, but it's funny, but it's true. I mean, there are so many different ways to do it, but there are certain things. You esculpt a heart the same way, right? And you place a catheter, the vasculature and the approach to that vessel does not change. So why do we approach how we educate people? Because we don't really. Every veterinary technology program, every veterinary school, they have the same curriculum. It's when we get into practice that it changes. And does it need to? Not necessarily.
I can see how someone can say, oh, I can grow and develop my skills in this. How can this grow into more of a pivoting your whole career journey, or like how can that start to be involved?
Oh, I love that you asked that question, because that's how you start it, right? If we start everyone at the same playing field, right? This is the conversation between equity and equality, right? We want to start everyone with what they need in order to get where they need to go. So if we start everyone with the same general practice methodologies and terms and things, all right, you're going up to emergency, start here. Well, from emergency, you can go into any discipline and craft it from there, especially in anesthesia, right? When I was trained, and some of my mentors, how they refer to it, anesthesia is a steady state of emergency. Great. And it's not untrue. And then think about, if you have that basic, and not in the terms of this is easy, but the basis of where to start from at an emergency level. And then you can just get that first integration, first threshold in emergency. And then you want to divert into oncology. It's an easy pivot because you understand how to do an emergent assessment and triage and a physical exam and all of those things. And now you're taking it into, how does this explain when a patient is neutropenic? What do we do when we have an extravasation? And then you can build from there into those upper levels, or thresholds rather, in a different discipline. But we all start here, so then we can branch off from here.
So how are you doing it? How does your company work? Like if somebody wanted to work with you,
Yeah.
what would that look like? What would someone expect?
It's a very customizable scenario, because it has to be, right? One of our main clients is in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's not going to work on the ground.
Although I find that funny, the whole circle coming back to Vancouver.
Right? Well, it's someone it's been a really amazing journey. I kept in touch with some of my friends from there and stayed in the industry, and they're like, hey, I'm doing this thing and you're doing that thing. Can we do the thing? We can do the thing. And it worked out beautifully, but also, clients in Nashville or up in New York and out in California, I'm here. Well, that's why we're building EV trainers in different regions, right? So they're trained at the hub with us, and then they'll have their on the ground operations to go to who they need to go to. In the meantime, if they're not able to do the on the ground or virtual, then that's easy. I can set up a Zoom call, not a problem. And we can go through a lot of things. I even managed to teach my business partner, who is an engineer and a program manager, how to place a catheter on an artificial vein through Zoom. And
Technology is amazing.
Right. If I can teach her, who's never done it, shaking, oh my God, a sharp thing coming at me, and coach her through that, because that's the biggest part, right? Is where you're training the skill, but you're coaching the person. And that combined process is teaching. So you can have that methodology and train your trainers, and then do it from anywhere. So it's really up to the individuals, the practices, what they need, right? Some of them just need the materials and a demonstration and an initial conversation. Good, we're done. Others, it's like a tapering pred dose. We come in and then we wean ourselves off. And others, it's like, no, we need you with us for a long time. Okay. So we have our base prices, and then we customize it from there, or we do a la carte options. Basically, what we're looking to do, Megan, is meet people where they are with what they need.
And I want to go back to you for a second, because of something you said. You're describing being able to know how to coach an individual, being able to see where they are and adapt and help them learn. How did you learn that? How do you feel like you developed that skill to be able to do that?
I was coached. It's funny. Honestly, a lot of it's experiential. I was a swimmer for a long time. I was a music student. So I had, vocal and piano coaches, and then athletic coaches, and then trainers, right? So where they're focused on the actual skill, but then it's how you're presenting that it makes it stick with you. And then I was like, this is kind of cool. Can this apply to other things besides, oh yeah, you can do this everywhere. And so all the courses that I could find, I ate it up. And it's really been developing my own methodology, also incorporating others. Like Dr. Neil Fleming in New Zealand has learning and teaching analyses called VARC. Are you visual, auditory, read, write, or kinesthetic? Spoiler alert, we're a bunch of them, right? No one's typically not just one. We utilize different modalities. And then we take into consideration, how do you communicate? What's your personality like? How do you feel? What's your emotional intelligence? What's your EQ? And a lot of folks previously were like, that doesn't matter. This is veterinary medicine. I was like, we wear our hearts right here. And we work with a bunch of people, and our patients don't drive themselves in here. So we kind of need to know how to talk to them and to feel appropriately so our hearts don't get shattered and we can keep them okay and keep going. So it was a lot of my own personal experiences and then wanting to see how we could incorporate that and change the approach to hands-on actual clinical skills work.
Sounds like you can develop this into leadership training as well.
Oh, that's Caitlin. Yeah. So
Caitlin.
with her management degree and things, that's so we try to honestly do that multimodal approach. Like I work with the support teams primarily, the CSRs and the assistants and the technicians, and then she and her cohort focus on the management and leadership teams, and then we all come together so that we're all having very similar conversations with a slightly different focus, and then bringing it together for that cohesive team-based approach.
I love stories. And you don't have to use names, but do you have a good story of a moment that it's one you just can't forget, that you've worked with a team and you've just seen something work out beautifully? Can you tell a story around that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So we've been working with this team for a couple of months at this point, and they asked to do a CPR workshop. Now I'm a huge ER junkie, and CPR is kind of my favorite, as weird as that sounds. So I brought our critters in, and we had this whole 2-hour session set up, and they didn't know, and I didn't tell them, that these guys, they have lungs. And once they intubate them and get them all set up and give a breath, it will actually breathe, and it will scare the crap out of them. Because this is vet med, and surprise. And so we're getting it, okay, and we're acting like it's a real code. I was like, get that tube in, all right, start giving it a breath. And they did it, and then she did it too hard, and it popped one of the bags in the chest. She's like, oh my God. And I was like, teaching moment. If it was a husky, what would you do? And she's like, and this. And they treated it like it was a real patient. And this person told them to do this, and that individual got involved in that. And they all came together, and I just stood there. I didn't do a thing. And they saved that patient, which is amazing. And it was all from the couple other sessions before where we talked about how we talk to one another, what skills we're focused on, and how do you respond in an emergent situation. And they ran with it, and they nailed it. One of my happiest moments. And then we took a picture afterwards, all smiling through our masks.
Aww.
It was really great.
I'll just open it up for you. Is there anything that's been on your mind recently from a previous conversation, a hot topic, words of wisdom for the profession?
I really appreciate the opportunity to share that someone else may learn, but really what I think, I don't want it to see it become a trendy topic and something we tick a box on, is anything that revolves around the DEI and B space, so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Our profession is 97% white, everyone. That's kind of too vanilla for me, and should be for all of us. And it's not, even though that is a concern, more than a concern, that's a problem. When we're talking about diversity, it doesn't just need to be all about color and racial differences, because really we're all the human race. Race is a social construct. Do the research. Really looking into what we all bring into this profession, right? Different experiences, different knowledge bases, different biases that we have to break down and talk about, and then making sure we understand what equity versus equality is. Be inclusive. Do you remember when you walked into a practice the first time, Megan? You're like, ooh. Do we want that for anyone else? I hope not. And that goes again into that sense of belonging. Like we all deserve to have that feeling that we matter and we belong here. So there's a lot of really great work being done in this space, and making sure that word is operative, work. You know, as an ally, it's not about how good it looks. It's about getting the work done that needs to be done. So I would encourage all of you that are listening, and I hope you are, to look out for all these amazing groups out there, like Pawsibilities for a free mentorship platform, Blend, which is this new DEIB accreditation program, which is really fantastic. You've got Pride VMC, you've got the MCVMA, the DVMC, extra acronyms in vet med. Woohoo! Learn what they are and why they matter and why they should matter to all of us. So that's the other piece to the factorial puzzle, right? Is make sure that there's a lot of us that are different, that everyone gets what they need. They feel like they matter and they are welcome here.
How do you bring that into what you do?
You live it. So it's something that, I am, well, again, non-visual on this space, but I'm a white cisgender heterosexual woman. That's who I am. In these summer months, I'm a little bit more melanous, but not really. And that's really all it is. We're melanin deficient, and I think it's a vitamin deficiency, and it's just teaching us how to enrich our lives. And so all of the standardization and things, like everything that we've talked about previously, when we're talking about how to communicate and how to involve everyone, that's in there. Like when you're training the trainers, like how do you have mindful conversations, right? How do you address as you're talking to someone? Because biases aren't simply involved in a discriminatory sense against appearance or creed or things, but knowledge biases, right? How many times do we belittle clients like, oh, I can't believe they don't understand? Where in any realm are they going to learn about parvo if they're going to law school? They're not, right? I didn't really know what parvo was until I worked in emergency medicine. That's my point. Making sure that it doesn't necessarily have to be in your face. It's simply who you are. And what you have these conversations around is this sense of openness, a growth mindset, and inclusivity. And then when those conversations come up, you address them. And if you're working in a leadership capacity, that has to be at the forefront. Like, what are your conversations sounding like? What is your inclusion policy? What are all of your policies regarding your team? And change the language. It's not your staff, it's your team. And start as simple as that, right? If you are in a location that is predominantly Hispanic speaking, as well as English, then make sure all of your client handouts are bilingual. If you have a higher concentration of a Southeast Asian language, get that available. That's what Google Translate is for. Being aware of what all the other tools are and to utilize them and to have those conversations and it not be, but every day. Infuse it with what you do, right? Again, I'm not a well-being expert, but every way that we lead a workshop, it's in there. I am not an expert on DEIB. I'm a true advocate and ally, but it's in there. And I will talk about it. It's in the forefront and at the closing of our emails. It's on our website. You know where we stand. And we're not backing down.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being willing to jump on the podcast. I always conclude with a final 4 questions. Additional one for you, because you said you have eaten some very strange things. What is the strangest things you have, one of the strangest things you have eaten?
Oh, that's going to be tough. Probably it was monkey.
Really?
I didn't know it at the time. It was one of those travels where you don't ask until you're done eating, and then you really wish you didn't. It wasn't exactly like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, like not that ethnocentric, but it was similar in Southeastern Asia. So,
all right. What is one thing on your bucket list?
I want to hit every continent before I kick that bucket. So got 3 left. I need to get Antarctica, Oceania, so Australia and those guys, and Europe of all places.
Really? All right. We'll have to get you there. So
I know. If you're listening, anyone who's sponsoring, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, you do a lot of speaking, so maybe we can get you there. Nice. What is a moment of simple joy for you?
Oh, that's easy. The first sip of coffee in the morning.
Oh, yes.
Just when it hits your palate and it just goes up your sinuses and you swallow and you're just like, it's good. And when you know, like you've splurged and got that really nice, like, and you ground the beans and it's ready, you're kind of looking forward to it almost the night before. Maybe my kids aren't awake yet. Even if they are, sometimes it's nice to have that moment with them both. And
it's a full experience. Yep.
Exactly. It is.
If you could create a law that everyone had to follow, what would your law be?
Be kind.
Simple, but impactful.
And profound.
Very much so. All right, your final question.
Ready.
What is one thing you are most grateful for?
My family. And I don't care how cheesy that sounds. I am just, every day I have with them, I'm so incredibly grateful. And that includes my friends that have become family. So when you're only one kid, you adopt a lot. So my extended family, my family, but every day I wake up with a 14-year-old daughter who still doesn't hate my existence, which I'm, and then a 9-year-old little guy that thinks I'm kind of awesome. And they keep me going. And yeah, my partner, my husband, he's pretty fantastic. So yeah, my family.
I love that. What does your husband do?
He is an aquatic biologist, so we are both nerds, and it's fabulous.
So he stuck with the aquatic.
He did.
Side.
Yeah,
Okay.
he shifted out of the oceanic realm because we live in Pennsylvania. And so he's, most days out in the rivers and the streams, checking for parasites and treating them, and sending me pictures when he's up in the helicopter treating the streams. It's nice. It's lovely. I'm not resentful at all.
Well, it kind of gives you, like, you still see pieces into that world where
Yeah,
you started. So that's kind
absolutely.
of nice.
No,
Yeah.
he's happy every day, and he loves what he does. And that's really, isn't that everyone's the dream, right?
The dream.
You love, you don't live to work, you work so you can live. But if you enjoy it along the way, it's not bad.
So, and you never know where your career takes you.
No.
Just
Every one of us is on that pivotal path. It's not just me. When you run into a wall, it's all right. Brush yourself off and turn directions, and you never know where you'll go.
This has been the Vet Life Reimagined podcast. Whether you are listening or watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please make sure you are subscribed to catch all these amazing people in our profession. Also, send this episode to someone you think who would appreciate it. Have a recommendation for someone who would be a good guest? Please reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. There aren't that many Dr. Sprinkles. Until next time, Vet Lifers.